Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Learnings with me, Ben Ibrahim. Thank you so much for your support in episode one. Some cracking content made by the basketball coaches. A few technical difficulties, I must admit, but you know what? We learned a lot, and this show is all about the learning of continuous improvement. Our topic today is how the Australian Wallabies of 1999 won the Rugby World Cup. And here to help us answer that question and much, much more on that very interesting topic is the one and only Toutai Kefu, also known as Kef. Kef played for the Wallabies 60 times. He won 2 Tri-Nations. He was selected for the Queensland Reds at the very young age of 21. And also he won the Bledisloe Cup 5 times. For those of you who are unaware what the Bledisloe Cup is, where have you been? But I'm just going to explain it to you. It is the Trans-Tasman Championship between the mighty All Blacks and the powerful Wallabies. They play for it every year. And it is hammer and tong stuff, regardless where the two nations are at in terms of IRB Rugby World Rankings. And the Tri-Nations is now known as the Rugby Championship, and that includes now Argentina. But it's always been a cracking tournament and played at a very, very high level. So, Kev, thank you so much, my friend, for being with us. And how have you been?
Pleasure to be here, Ben. I've been very well. I've been somewhat, there's been a little bit of boredom, but I've been trying to keep myself busy. We're just waiting for international rugby, hopefully, fingers crossed, can start back up at the end of the year, but that's probably still 50-50 at the moment. But, there's a few things I can do locally here. I'm helping with a school and helping with a club, so trying to keep myself busy.
No, good stuff, man. And for those of you who are unaware as well, I forgot to mention it. I do apologize. Kef is also the head coach of the Tonga rugby team, and he coached them last year at the 1999, sorry, not the 1999 World Cup, the 2019 World Cup, getting my nines mixed up in Japan, and they did very, very well as well. So, Kef, first question just as a warm-up, and we're going to start with a question from one of our followers and viewers. Because in the build-up to this interview, I put it out there to all our viewers to leave us some questions just to make our interview a lot more smoother. And this question coming from Bobby Ong. Bobby is asking, how did you transition from school rugby to high performance rugby? Because you were identified as a very young, talented athlete.
I think in schools in Brisbane anyway, there is it's quite competitive. The GPS rugby competition is very, very competitive. So you've got certain levels of already professionalism within the program. So, we train 3 days a week on the field, and there's also 2 to 3 gym sessions. So most schools take it pretty seriously. So going from that kind of program, you move into an age group under 19, age under 20s, and they also have stepping stones in terms of professionalism along the way. So it's a gradual build-up, but it's quite a bit of a shock to the system.
Yeah, and I'm sure it was a bit of a shock to the system back then as well, as rugby was just starting to go professional, yeah?
Yes, yeah, it was. And I started, even as I reached a senior group, I started in the professional era. So in 1996, in the amateur era. So in 1996, when rugby turned professional, I had already been playing a couple of seasons in the senior grade. So, but look, back then the Reds were really a professional outfit anyway in the amateur era.
But let's talk about the road to the Rugby World Cup, Kev, from 96 to 99 after the South Africa World Cup. For the Wallabies in particular, it wasn't smooth sailing. And in 1997, you guys were heavily beaten by the Springboks. Tell us about that loss and how it affected the journey.
Yeah, look, 1997, that was my first, I earned my first cap and I came off the bench in that particular game. I think we were in Bloemfontein for that game against South Africa. And we had a coach, Greg Smith, who leading up to that game was under pressure. He was that game probably was the nail in the coffin for him. We got beaten by about 50 points, I think. It was a record score, and I come off the bench. So I think at that stage, after that particular game, the powers that be knew that we needed to change, and along came, they appointed Rod McQueen, and he had pretty much 3 years to prepare the team for the World Cup. So he had plenty of time, and that's when the road started to win back the William Web Ellis Trophy.
Now, after the appointment of Rod, tell us about the stuff that happened in the changing room, coffee shop discussions. How did you guys come together as a group?
Oh, look, so we already had the nucleus of a really good team. I mean, we had some world-class players who had already run a World Cup: Johnny Eales, Tim Horan, Jason Little, etc. We, at that particular time, we had a really good group of young players coming through. There was Stephen Larkins, Ben Tunes, Joe Ross, David Giffens. So we had an exciting group of young players. So what we needed was just, a bit of leadership to in terms of a coach and management and administration, governance, to bring that team together, give them the best possible resources that they could have, to win the World Cup. And Rod McQueen had a 3-year plan from the day he got appointed to the World Cup. It was all structured along the way that this was a journey for us to, with the end goal being the World Cup.
Could you tell us about the personalities? I mean, you mentioned some big names there and some young names back then who went on to become rugby legends within the sport. But I mean, sometimes people are so good, sometimes they don't click. Was there anything like that in the squad, and how did you overcome it?
Oh, look, I think we all became really, really close, because Rob McQueen, when he was appointed, he brought in a Wallaby base. So when we went to games, we always travelled out of a base. So we based ourselves. The first base was Sunshine Coast. So we based ourselves at a little resort there, and we trained there. So for every game, we flew out of there and we flew back into the Sunshine Coast, and it was a home away from home, really. So we all lived together in this resort. We became really close, and the things and because when you become really close, you just everything gels, on the field, off the field. But then when you do come close, you're allowed to test each other. Yeah, and that's what we did. Like, I remember every time at training, we would always have little skirmishes in terms of punch ups and fights, because we'd get on each other's nerves, and we were a real competitive bunch. Like, we didn't like to lose. So even at training, we had a really good group of guys who were competitive, always wanted to win everything. And I remember Owen Finnegan one time, who he was just the team pest. He was, and everyone would pick on him, because I remember whatever downtime you got, like getting ready before training, or just getting ready to do your baths and your spas, we would always belittle him and pick on him, and in good jest. He had a funny body, old Owen, and we used to call him Melon, because he had a big forehead. And we always used to tease him a bit, and he'd always give as good as he got. So he was always a team pest, always annoying someone, and I remember a lot of training sessions, he would always give these little penalties away, and it would always infuriate the other players and the opposition team that was playing against him. And we'd start arguing and throwing punches, and then by the end of it, we were all good mates. So we'd all have dinner together. Our wives would always have a glass of wine together. So we were that good. We were that close that we could always have those little. We could call each other out. We could be honest with each other, and mate, on the field, sometimes it'd flare up quite regularly.
Right. So none of that anger was taken to the dinner table or social
No,
events or
no,
anything?
not at all. Not at all. We're all really good mates, and we still keep in contact. Just by messages. We've got a little bit of a WhatsApp group chat going on between 5 and 6 of us. So yeah, no, we're still quite close, and a lot of our kids have grown up together over that period. Where we played together for 5 to 10 years. Our kids all really grew up together, so we know each other really well.
Right. Now, you spoke about results earlier. In 1998, the results improved dramatically. Still, you guys were not on top of the world, but I mean, it was, like you said, it was part of the journey. Tell us about those good results and what was that down to?
Wow. So when Rob McQueen came on board, I remember the first thing he did was get us really organised. He would give us diaries. He would plan our week. We would have video sessions. We studied the opposition intently. We would analyse the opposition through a SWOT um, structure, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And that's the first time I've ever been involved in something like that. And he brought that from he had a business background, and
Yes,
he brought
he
that
was very
from,
successful in business. Yeah.
yeah. So he really got the team organised, and we had a lot of clarity around our roles. So we were really engaged in what we were doing. Whereas before, I suppose we just trained and played. Now, um, uh, Rod McQueen brought this approach, a really, really structured approach where no stone was left unturned. We would study the opposition. We would work on our weaknesses. We would study our own weaknesses. But we were all much more engaged in terms of the way we want to play. And we took that onto the field. And 1998 was probably one of my favourite years because we won the Bledisloe Cup. It was 3-0. It was a whitewash. And it was the first time we'd actually won the Bledisloe Cup in New Zealand for a very, very long time. I remember that. It's one of my favourite test matches. We played All Blacks in Christchurch. It was an afternoon test. Um, and I remember I was rooming with Matt Cobain at the time, and we were watching the video, and they were quite the media and the press were really confident, and they thought they were going to just whitewash us because they had Michael Jones, Fitzpatrick, Zinzan Brooke, all these legends of the All Black side over the last 5 to 10 years, and rightly so. But as a group of young guys, we really knew how the way we wanted to play, and when we went out there, we had a good mixture of those seasoned hard professionals that I mentioned, the Eels, the Horans, the Littles, and we mixed that up with some really good young players coming through. Stephen Larkham with George Gregan, Joe Roth, Ben Tune, Tommy Bowman, as he saw that try that you just put up on the footage there. We just absolutely did something magical that afternoon. And then we took the third game back to Sydney and we won. So we won 3-0, and that's the first time we won the Bledisloe in a very long time.
You mentioned about, analysis and what Rod McQueen brought to the table, detail, homework, strategic planning, SWOT analysis, all the above. And don't forget, this was 19 years ago. Do you think, in your personal opinion, no right or wrong answer, that that was a template for high performance, not just for rugby, but for other elite sporting teams in terms of sports science, sports medicine, detail work? It's not just about the stuff that happens on the field.
Absolutely, 100%. I think we were the leaders back then, and that just goes to show we had that number one position there for a good 5 to 8 years. I think we were winning Bledisloe Cups, Tri Nations, so we were on top of the world, a number one position for a long time, and I think it was because of Rod McQueen's approach, who really modernised our approach to the game. I mean, I've never seen anything like that before when he brought that in, or that strategic approach to SWOT analysis, sports science, and what teams have done so far, they've taken that and ran with it. They've developed it even more, and they've added more detail on top of what we started. You look at the Wallabies team now, we're struggling somewhat. I think New Zealand have really taken that approach that we had back then, and they've taken it to another level. Because I really think that our talent is similar, if not maybe better than New Zealand's. But their approach off the field and their coaching, I think, is probably at a different level compared to us. So we need to catch up a little bit. But you could probably thank Rod McQueen for what he started. He really brought the game into the 20th century when it turned professional back then.
You beat the All Blacks, best team in world rugby for many, many years. How much of a confidence did that give the whole squad a lift and said, winning the World Cup is very possible?
Yeah, definitely gave us a lot of confidence. Even as a individual myself, I was still a little bit unsure whether I could compete at this level. But after that game, and I also played really well. Really proud of my performance. It gave me the confidence, to say, wow, not only did we have the World Cup in our sights, but I think it proved to us as individuals, we can compete with these big boys. We're a chance at this World Cup. So that was an important thing, because we still hadn't, as a team, we still hadn't found our feet.
So where I'm leaning to, you guys had a pretty, no disrespect to the opposition. You had Ireland, America, Romania. You cruised past them. You beat the host nation, Wales, 24-9. And then in that semi-final, that dramatical semi-final win over the Springboks in extra time, no try scored. But as Phil Kern said on a TV program once, that was a really, really good game without tries being scored. Now, apart from the result, apart from it can go, the match probably could have gone either way. Timmy Horan having a good match. Tell us some stories about that match that we can't find on the internet.
Oh, look, I think, I remember straight after that game. So when the boys would love to have a beer after every game. It was just part of our getting together and enjoying the moment. And celebrating something that we did well. That was probably the only game where I think we were so tired and stuffed that boys just probably had one beer at dinner and went to bed.
Wow.
We knew that we had a grand final the week later, and we had a travel day the next day. But usually, it was encouraged for us to go out, enjoy where you are, enjoy each other's company, meet up with family and friends and have a beer and celebrate that, because that was a big part of our journey to celebrate every achievement. And that kept the top team tight. But after that particular game, no one went out. Everyone was absolutely tired and stuff from the game, because it was an overtime game. I think there was a roller coaster of emotions. Still minutes from the end, we didn't know whether we would win or we would lose. So I think, although we won and everyone was excited, when we got into the dressing room, we were just relieved that the game was finished. And like I said, it'd been such a big World Cup up till then. The boys were absolutely smashed, So to not see any of the players go out and enjoy a beer with friends and family was something really strange. I'd never really experienced it before. So, but that just goes to show how much that game took a lot out of us.
From a technical perspective, if you watch that game, I remember that game extremely well. It could have gone either way. Timmy Horan was just amazing that day. Jus van der Westhuizen, the late Jus van der Westhuizen was, oh, I mean, he could have scored a few tries as well. Yanni De Beer was not probably on point as he was in the quarterfinal against England. Technically, where do you think you had the edge over them in that game? Because mentally, like you said, you were exhausted, extra time, you didn't know where it was going.
Yep. We thought we thought that we could pick the tempo up on them, like play really quick rugby, get over the advantage line, like hit really quick ball, and that was our focus leading into the game. We knew that they were a big, aggressive forward pack, and running into them straight wasn't really an option. We use a lot of dummy plays and trick plays, and just to try and find little holes and play with a little bit more width, because playing direct into the South African team was a big no-no back then. So what we try to do is just play rugby with a little bit more tempo and use the quick ball and play a little bit of width, because we know if we moved them around a bit, we could find some holes and they could tire by moving them around a bit, and then we could find a few weaknesses maybe creep into their game. I remember also one of our biggest strategies was to stop Yanni De Beer, because in that quarterfinal he kicked something like 5 or 6 drop goals. So
Record.
we practiced. Yeah, so I think he shaped up to kick a few, and we got a few charge downs. I think he kicked 1 drop goal, but we did a really good job. The longer we lasted in the game, I think the better it suited us. So being a big physical pack, I think they probably tired in that extra time period, and we just had to hang in there. And that's what we did. I mean, everyone knows Stephen Larkham's drop goal. I mean, they may say, "Oh, look, it's 1 in a million thing," but I mean, his intent was to kick the drop goal, and it went over. So we'll take that every day of the week.
Yeah, no, you should, mate. You should. And it was a really, really great game and very technical, and more a match about an example of resilience.
Yes. Yeah, very good point. I mean, we absorbed a lot in that first half, and I think we went to a quite a comfortable lead going into half time, and then they clawed back, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, we just we hung in there. We hung in there, and that was, that we had built that resilience and that toughness over the last 2 to 3 years. Our trainer, Steve Nance, who was brought on at the same time Rod McQueen was hired, and Rod McQueen specifically wanted Steve Nance. He got us the fittest we've ever been. That 99. Sorry?
He was from Rugby League, wasn't he?
He was from Rugby League. He was a Brisbane Broncos for a long time under Wayne Bennett. So one thing that Rod McQueen wanted us as a team was to be the fittest team at the World Cup. So he brought Steve Nance on, and some of the trainings leading up to that World Cup period, I mean, 2 years, 12 months out, I was in the fittest stage of my whole career for that World Cup. That's the fittest I've ever been. And that's, thanks to Steve Nance. He built that toughness and that resilience and that fitness into us. And that showed out. That showed up in that semi-final.
So, Kev, thanks for sharing that with us. But the other semi-final, France did the biggest upset of all upsets and defeated the All Blacks, who were heavy favorites for that tournament. Did that play in your mind?
Yeah, well, I mean, so the next day after our match, we travelled back to Wales, and we were just going to get to the hotel just in time before the All Blacks and France game we're going to start. We were all totally expected to play. We were expected for the All Blacks to win. So we assumed that we were going to play them. So all our analysis and preview was done on the All Blacks. During the game, we just couldn't believe it. All Blacks, obviously they got out to that early lead with Jonah Lomu scoring some fantastic tries and setting up tries, and then to see France claw themselves back in the second half, we were actually cheering for France. We wanted them to win. As soon as the game finished, our analysis group had to work tirelessly through the night on getting French footage, because all our review was going to be done on the All Blacks. So they had to work tirelessly through the night and just get videos and statistics on the French team during the World Cup. That was a big shock to us, even though we would have rather play France. We were expecting to play New Zealand, so we were quite shocked. But it was probably one of the highlight games in the tournament. You had our semi-final the day before, which was full of surprises and overtime, and that went down to the wire. And then to see a absolute upset in the other semi-final was, it capped off a magnificent World Cup, and the final, obviously, the week later.
I did. Well done again. I mean, 20 plus years on. But Kev, the final, and I keep saying these words, no disrespect, but I mean, even though at halftime it was really, really close, but the final against France, was it as easy as it looked? I mean, were you guys comfortable?
If we played well and played to our ability, we would win the game. But we knew the French, on any given day, like they did in the semi-final, they can pull a rabbit out of the hat, and you just can't predict what the French can do. They're so unpredictable. They can be rocks or they can be diamonds. So we approached the game like it was going to be like it was a final in the World Cup. We're going to go out there and try and dominate and win the game. And we knew we had a good good record against the French. One thing that we kind of did prepare for was them getting a little bit on the dirty side of things, which they did. They started to get a little bit dirty just by eye gouging, throwing punches, that kind of. They tried to deter us from playing our game, which I thought we handled brilliantly. We kind of prepared for that anyway. So we handled that. We went back to rugby and we just played our normal game.
Now, tell us about that final, mate. We've got some footage of you here lifting the William Web Ellis Trophy. I mean, tell us about this moment, spine-tingling, lifting the trophy, but more so about the journey, what it meant to you. I'm sure at times with all the injuries and whatnot, and you probably question yourself whether you wanted to keep going, but tell us about what this moment meant to you in terms of lifting the trophy and all that I just said.
Oh, look, this was 3 years in the making. We had planned this 3 years before, and to absolutely lift the cup like I have there was a dream come true. But I think a lot of us knew that we could do it because we'd beaten the All Blacks, we'd beaten the best in the world. But to do it was another thing, and to actually do it, we were relieved more than anything. Rob McQueen always said it's about the journey. It's about the journey, because the result only takes, if it happens, the result's 80 minutes, and the journey leading up to that is 3 years of blood, sweat, tears. A lot of running, a lot of doing weights, a lot of analysis, studying other teams, trying to improve your own game. It was 3 years of that, culminating in those 80 minutes on the field. And there's, I think, a big sigh of relief just from everyone in the squad. I think it doesn't really sink in till a while after it, maybe till when you get back home, and that Christmas holidays where you've got some time to reflect over what had just happened, the months before that, was, an absolute mighty achievement. And we're all very proud of not only ourselves, but our teammates and our group that went through, because there was a few players that retired after that, and that was one of our motivations, was to send them out on a really memorable note. There was people moving on, so it was the last time that group had been together. So we're a very absolutely proud moment. It's probably one of my highlights, definitely up there in the top three.
And Kev, thanks so much for being with us today. My second episode of Sunday Learnings. It's been fantastic. It's been very, very motivational and inspiring. But you're a head coach right now. Let's just finish with this question. Yep. What I always like to say to Rugby World Cup winners, I mean, especially your era when it transformed from amateur to professionalism, the rugby journey is tough. Injuries, sacrifices with family, girlfriends, you name it, missing birthday parties, university, the whole lot. So I always say to rugby players, the wills and the bills, the sacrifices, was it worth it to meet Bill?
Look, looking back, I think it is, because it's only a short journey. It's taken, I mean, as professionals, you want to go to the top of your sport, and you can't do that without making some sacrifices. And like you said, I've missed many births, anniversaries, birth dates. I missed a lot of time with my kids growing up. But it doesn't last forever. And it's probably one of the regrets I have, but I've got spending plenty of time with them now since I've been retired. I'm still involved with the game as a head coach, so there's still some little sacrifices. But I think, if you're doing what you love and your family respect that, it's the only way you can go and move forward, I think, all together.
Thanks very much, Kev. Everyone, we've spoken to Toutai Kefu, Australian Wallaby and an Australian Rugby World Cup winner in 1999, the winner of the William Web Ellis Trophy in 99, 2 Tri-Nations and multiple trophies, not just within Australia, but for overseas as well. Kev, it's been a pleasure talking to you on Sunday Learnings with me, Ben. Until the next time, my friend, you take care and enjoy the time with the family. Stay safe and go Tongan Rugby.
Thanks, Ben.